Illustrator has many shape tools that can be used to draw virtually any shape that you desire. They may seem simple enough to use, but there are a lot of hidden ways to use these tools. Let's take a closer look. I'm beginning this video with the shapes.ai file already open on my computer. And I'm starting here, if you go to the Artboards panel, with the Shapes Artboard active. Now the shape tools are located right here in your Tools panel. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that rectangle tool. And if you click and hold, you'll notice that we have a total of 6 shape tools that we can use. Now I'm going to start with the rectangle tool, and we're going to go ahead and simply draw a shape. So we can click and drag to draw the shape that we desire. Now that may sound simple enough, and you can see that it's using the default fill and stroke color that you have chosen. But there's a lot of other ways that we can do this. So let's take a look. I'm going to press the delete key to delete that object. Let's say we wanted a perfect shape. So what we can do is if you hold down the shift key on your keyboard and you draw, it's going to make a perfect rectangle, meaning the width and height are going to be the exact same size. I'm going to go ahead and delete that object. Let's take another look. What if we wanted to draw the shape from the middle? Well, what we can do is we can hold down the Option key on Mac or the Alt key on Windows, and we can click and drag to draw that shape from the middle. And if you also add the Shift key, you'll draw a perfect shape from the middle. But wait, there's more. I'm going to press the Delete key. As you're drawing a shape like this, I'm just going to click and drag, and I'm still holding the mouse button down. If I hold down the space bar on my keyboard, Illustrator lets me reposition this object to a different location. And when I let go of the space bar, I can continue dragging to generate the shape that I wish. Now I'll go ahead and delete that object. And then we're going to do one more method, and that is to simply click once with this tool, and it's going to bring up the rectangle dialog box. And in this dialog box, I can precisely define the size of the shape that I want to create. So let's say I needed a rectangle or a square that was 1.875 by 1.875. And I also could have turned on the link button to make sure that both of these values were the same. But when I click OK, it's going to draw a shape to the exact dimensions that I entered. So there's a lot of ways that we can do this. Now I'm going to go ahead and delete that object. In addition to the rectangle tool, you can click and hold, and we also have the rounded rectangle tool. And if I click and drag with this tool, it's going to draw a shape with rounded rectangles. Now, if you wanted to change the radius using this tool, you need to use the click method. So if I delete this and I just click once with my mouse, I can precisely define what corner radius I want to use. So if I wanted an object that was, say, 2 inches by 2 inches with a 1/4 inch radius, I could click OK, and that would draw that shape with that radius. Once I do that, any future objects that I draw are going to also use that radius as well. So we'll go ahead and delete that. The next one is the ellipse tool. Now, the ellipse tool we're actually going to put into practice here. So let's jump over to our sporting equipment artboard, and you can see that we have a bunch of objects that need a circle behind them. So what I'm going to do here is, using this ellipse tool, I'm going to click and drag, and I'm going to hold down the shift key as I do to make a perfect circle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down the space bar to try to reposition this in the center of the object. And when I let go, I want it to be about 1.5 inches. And so when I let go of my mouse, it's going to draw the shape that I've drawn. Now, you can see that it created an object with a default fill of white and a stroke of black. So I'm going to press the X key on my keyboard to bring the stroke forward, then the / to remove the stroke. Then I'll press the X key again to bring the fill color to the front. And in the swatches panel, I'm going to choose the brown color. And if I go to my object menu, choose Arrange, and say Send to Back, you can see that it now positions that where I want it to be. You can even go to your selection tool and use your arrow keys to nudge this a little bit if it's not quite where you want it to be. Now what we can also do is I'm going to hold down the Option key on Mac or the Alt key on Windows, and I'm going to click and drag to make a copy. Then as I'm dragging, I'm going to add the Shift key so that it constrains the movement perfectly horizontally. As I let go, it's going to make a copy. I'm going to repeat that process to put a circle behind all of these objects. And we'll do one more over here. And then in your swatches panel, you can use these swatches to change the color of these individual circles to give them a better look. Now, there are a couple other shapes that I want to show you. If I go back to my Artboards panel, we'll double click on the Shapes artboard. And we also have the Polygon tool. And if I click and drag with this tool, you're going to notice that it's going to draw, well, a polygon. And if you reposition this, you can drag it to the size that you wish. But if you need more or less sides, you can use the up arrow key on your keyboard to add sides, and the down arrow key on your keyboard to remove sides. You'll notice if I go all the way to the end, I can create a triangle quite easily. Now, quite honestly, with this polygon tool, I find it's a little bit easier and you get a little bit more control if you just use the click once method, and then I can precisely draw an object that has, say, 8 sides. And that'll create an octagon that I can use maybe if I wanted to create a stop sign or something like that. Now, if I click and hold on this tool again, we also have the star tool. And this works very much in a similar fashion as the polygon tool. If I click and drag, as I'm drawing this, I can use the up and down arrow keys on my keyboard to add points to the star. Again, if I go all the way to the bottom, I get another triangle. And that allows me to adjust my shape to the precise points that I want. So again, the up arrow adds points, down arrow removes points. Once again, to get the utmost in control, I just click once, and I can not only set the first radius, but also the second radius as well. So if I set the first radius to, say, 2 inches, the second radius to 1 3/4 with 20 points, I get a different shape and more precise shape than using the arrow keys. Now, I'm going to go ahead and delete these, because the last option I want to show you in here is the flare tool. And using this tool, you can click and drag, and this is using a really interesting effect. When you let go, you're going to look at this and you're going to say, okay, that's great. What am I going to use that for? Well, this lens flare tool creates a complex shape that utilizes blending modes and complex paths to create a certain appearance. I'm just going to switch to my selection tool here. Most people will draw this shape and they're going to say, okay, that's great, but I don't know how I would ever use this. Well, in order for this to really give you the appearance that you want to see, what you need to do is put a color behind this. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my rectangle tool, and I'm going to set my fill color to black, just to start. And I'm going to draw a rectangle the full size of my artboard. Now you'll notice when I select this shape with my selection tool and I choose Object, Arrange, Send to Back, you'll see that you get a much different appearance than when you initially drew it. And I'll just show you, even if you draw a shape but it's filled with white, you're not going to get much of a different appearance. As a matter of fact, you can barely even tell that it's there. So if you fill that shape and send it to the back, you can experiment with different colors and see the different results that you get when you apply different colors. And again, this is using a fairly complex blending mode to create different illusions and appearances. And you can even get some pretty cool appearances if you apply an image or position an image underneath there as well. So those are the shape tools that we have available inside of Illustrator. And now that you understand how these tools work, you can take full advantage of them when creating your own content inside of Adobe Illustrator.